Hello, my name is Amy Sturkey. I am a pediatric physical therapist, and I am here with Josh's parents. So why don't you introduce yourselves?
I'm Peg Broughton.
I'm David Broughton.
And Josh is somebody I love.
Me too.
But I imagine there's stories behind Josh. So tell me about the beginning. How did your pregnancy go?
It went fine. It was pretty textbook actually, until all of a sudden he decided he was coming now, and he was born 2 months early all of a sudden, and that was a night.
It was 3 pounds 15 ounces.
3 pounds 15 ounces.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But
and you were young. You were just out of college?
Yeah.
We were just out of college. We weren't that young. We were 27.
27.
Yeah.
Okay. But nobody prepares you for 2 month early 3 pound baby. Nobody's prepared for a baby. Babies aren't prepared. People aren't prepared for their first baby anyway, right. But this was a lot.
I was very underqualified.
And so were you aware that he had problems right at the beginning?
Well, we knew he was early, and we knew that problems could come with that. They had told us that. And he was struggling to breathe in the beginning, and he spent 2 months in the hospital. But
2 months in the hospital.
Yeah, he got stronger and stronger, and he did very well, actually.
Was he in an incubator?
He was in an incubator for
The
a while, about the first month. Yeah. He was on a ventilator for the first few days.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then and we finally got to take him home on Thanksgiving.
How long was he in the hospital?
Not quite 2 months. Yeah.
Not quite 2 months.
Yeah.
And then you got to take him home.
Yeah.
And how did you find out that he had cerebral palsy?
Because he was born early, they were doing a pretty routine checks, and they said, down the road he may have developmental problems. So They would do a routine check. So about 3 months old, we went for one of these checks. And Josh and I. David always went to all of these appointments with us, but for some reason, I think he had to work or something. And because it was just a routine thing, we didn't expect to find anything out about anything. So we said, oh, no big deal. We'll go and do this. So Josh and I we had to drive 45 minutes away to these because we were in a very small town. And we drove up and we went for the appointment, and they were doing these different things. And she was kind of talking about, he's kind of stiff with this or whatever. And I was like, oh, okay. And she said, well, he has cerebral palsy, right? And I said, no, I didn't. No.
And did you know what cerebral palsy was?
Vaguely. I had a vague idea of, very severely affected children.
Had you met anybody with cerebral palsy? No. So it was kind of an abstract word for you.
Yes, very much so. Very much so.
And there's a continuum of people. So it sounds like you in your mind, the only thing that popped up was someone who was very severe.
Right. I didn't know there were degrees of it or anything like that. I didn't know. But all of a sudden I knew that our life was changing.
And did you hold it together there, or did you wait till you got to the car to cry?
A car for sure, all the way home. and how am I going to tell Dad?
Yeah, because you didn't have a cell phone to call him immediately, so you had a drive home to be able to cry and figure out.
Yep, and figure out how I was going to tell you, and then it was, well, okay, now what does this mean for us? What do we do with this?
Yeah, you couldn't Google it.
Because there was no Google then. That's hard to imagine now, isn't it?
Yeah. And really limited resources where we were. So
what did you do? You looked in the Britannica or something?
Probably.
And started asking a lot of questions.
Wow. So, you from there you started therapy pretty early then? What I mean, were you already you weren't in therapy at that point. It was after that you started having, when did that happen?
Yeah, it must have been fairly soon after that. I'm sure we set it up with our pediatrician, and they had someone come to the home and work with us. Right?
Yeah.
And they just kind of kept us going. And I guess that was probably our biggest source of information was from them.
Right.
What to expect and And I think what I learned most was that forget expectations.
Right.
Whatever your expectations are, just put them aside and then just work with what you have, because as soon as you know, okay, well, what does this mean? And then it never is what you think it's going to be. And you're better off to just deal with what you have and where you are than you are trying to, anticipate.
Right. And so there weren't support groups for you to go to, and there weren't chat rooms or there was no. So where was your support group? Was your family?
Kind of. They were thrown even more than we were, I think.
They weren't unsupportive, but they were just, we didn't know, they didn't know. I mean, even now, how many times do you walk through the mall and see people with CP? Not really.
Never,
Yeah.
We still say.
That's why I think it's
where do they all hide?
That's why I told Josh that I thought it was so good that he was out in public so people could see.
Yeah.
It's huge.
It's huge to be a presence, because the research says that if you know one person with cerebral palsy, did you know anybody with cerebral palsy? If you knew one person with cerebral palsy that you think that cerebral palsy is okay, but if you don't, then you have all these other.
Oh, yeah.
So he had therapy. They came to your house to start off with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which was great. That was really helpful. Yeah.
But it wasn't that long before he started having surgeries, and that sounds like he had a lot of surgeries.
He did. Well, and we moved too. So we moved.
Fortunately, we moved to Boston, where the Boston Children's Hospital is like the #1 pediatric facility in the world for 20 consecutive years. So we had pretty good care there.
Right.
Yeah, that was a big reason to move there. Yeah.
So it affected where you lived.
Yeah.
Sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I just wonder what that's like to take your baby into a surgery and
awful.
And Josh was talking at all of these surgeries, I assume. So he was
vocal.
Yeah, poor Josh developed a fear of doctors pretty early on.
Right.
Just because for most of us, for surgery, if you go in for a surgery, it's usually because you're hurting or you have something wrong and you're going to fix it. In his mind, he would go in feeling fine and come out feeling terrible. So I can understand why that'd be very confusing, especially to a child.
Yeah.
Right.
Why are you making me do this? And you felt a little bit like you were betraying him too.
Really?
You know that this is what's best for him, but how do you explain to a 5-year-old that this horrible thing is what's best for you, and this is going to make your life better?
I think that would be overwhelming.
It was hard.
And at least then you were at a place where you didn't have to go far for the surgery. So I'm assuming you had to stay overnight, so it wouldn't be as big a deal. You could go visit him during you had to stay at the hospital with him when he was a kid.
And those beds are really comfortable.
Not at all.
We started bringing our own, actually.
Really?
Yeah, we got it down. We'd come into this hospital with suitcases and stuff because we didn't know exactly what we needed and what.
Oh, that's sad.
It kind of is, but.
Yeah, they're not going to do it for you.
Right. And you had insurance that covered those things, or was that financially something that each time he had surgery, it was?
Not in the first couple of years, but when we moved to Boston, we eventually did. Yeah.
After a while.
Yeah, it was
your internship didn't have insurance in the beginning.
There were a number of lean years.
Yeah, I think that would all be challenging.
Yeah.
I feel like we're just starting to have this conversation, but we need to finish this one up. Thank you so much for being willing to talk with me, and we'll talk to you again real soon.
Happy New Year.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye.
If you liked this video and would like to be notified by email when the next video comes out, click the subscribe button here and click the golden bell icon and ensure notifications are enabled on your account.